Thank you, Professor Thurat. Namaskar. I just want to say that I'm not an educationist, but this I am looking at this new education policy from a disability activist perspective and try to see how it will affect the people we work with. It's very important to remember that many disability activists actually felt that this will be this new education policy is a very good for the whole disability community. One of the main reason behind is because in our previous experience with the education sector, we have saw that disability के कोई बात ही कोई inclusion ही नहीं होते, कोई बातचीत ही नहीं होते. तो इसमें include कर दिया तो लोग बहुत खुश हुआ कि बहुत अच्छा है ये हम तो उनके इसमें include हो गए. But you cannot see it only from a issue where I mean, of course, this new education policy is coming from we as disabled people, we do not live in a vacuum. We are part of the larger socio-political background. So, as my previous speaker was saying, that the whole education is now going to more towards privatization and commercialization. If that is happening, we need to understand that the disabled people will be affected much more too. For example, the law that rules us right now, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, RPT, it stipulates that every government institution of higher education shall reserve not less than 5% seats for students with benchmark disabilities. Now, RPT says that every government institutions have to reserve seat for a disabled student. It does not speak at all about private institutions. Definitely, the whole disability sector will get affected if there are much more privatization will be happening, because, and I'll go to the detail of why disabled student, even though there is a 5% reservation mandate right now, why is it that we do not see in the colleges, existing government colleges, that there are hardly 5% seats reserved? I mean, even if they want to reserve, they do not get so many disabled candidates. Why is it so? It's again, if you go to the basic of, I mean, the education starts from the much younger level before they go to college. I'll just quote a UNESCO report which came out last year, 2019. It's called the State of Education Report of India, Children with Disabilities, and this report specifically says 3/4 of the children with disabilities at the age of 5 years and 1/4 between 5 to 19 years do not go to any education institution. And this is a reality of our country. The number of children enrolled in school drops significantly with each successive level of schooling. There are fewer girls with disabilities in schools than boys with disabilities in school. And then a large number of children with disabilities do not go to regular schools but are enrolled at the National Institute of Open Schooling. The percentage of children attending schools is the lowest among those with multiple disabilities, mental illnesses, and mental retardation. Now, if you think of, remember these issues in mind, and we have to read the NEP from this angle. If we have such a large number of children, disabled children who do not go to any school, and even if those who are going, they are dropping out at every step. And where do we see a vision, forget about vision, any kind of direction to include these children in education system? I mean, when I read the NEP, I do not get any kind of direction of how our country is trying to include this particular kind of category of children. If you look at RPD Act, according to the current law of a country, there are 21 kinds of disabilities. And forget about 21. I can't see any kind of understanding of what are the kinds of reasonable accommodation this children will be needing to get through this whole maze called education system that we have in our country. It's very interesting because RPD talks about inclusive education. It focuses on inclusive education, but we know that special education is universal. And very interestingly, the special education schools that are under giving special education are not under Ministry of Human Resource Development, or if we call it Education Department right now, whatever name you call it, it's not under that. It's under MSJ, the Ministry of Social Justice, and so it cannot be. Special schools are not under Education Department; it's under some other department. So we can see the kind of divide we already have in our country regarding education of disabled children. So the children who are going disabled children who are going under Sarvashikha Abhiyan, who are going to those schools, they are counted amongst those who are getting education under MHRD. Those who are going into special schools are actually, and majority are going to the special schools only, and they are getting counted in the under. It's a social justice issue. It cannot be. Education can never be like it should come under one department. That is a demand the disability activists has been demanding for very, very long. Of course, the NEP does not give any direction that it will be included. The special schools will be included under the education department right now. I also wanted to highlight here that the RPD Act and the Right to Education Act, there are differences between those two acts, and this was also there was also demand, many of us actually demanding from the when the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which that it should be actually at par with RT, to Education Act, and those loopholes are there, and there should have been some kind of cognizance. Till now, it's 2016, our law has been passed, so it's we are in 2020 now. We have a new education policy. Again, loopholes are not at all mentioned. It does not talk about the difference between RPD Act and RT Act, though RPD Act is evoked in the NEP. Which gives us a sense that we are getting included, but it also gives us a sense that that inclusion is not very. It's not done in a very proper manner. You just, for the sake of inclusion, you're including it. And I can recall here when the draft National Education Policy came out, we were very vocal, and many disability groups sent their very detailed observation that where are the disabled children in this whole NEP. And some of the few, I'll not say some, few of the suggestions had been picked up and been included in the current one, but a lot of what I'll say is it's a lot of rhetorics are there. I mean, there are many times you're talking about inclusion, you're talking about access, you're talking about equity. So all the language used is very sugar-coated words are used. But how inclusion is happening, that pathway is totally missing from the NEP. One thing I'd like to talk about here is this dropout issue. How, I mean, we know this, like I just quoted the UNESCO report, that there's so many children are dropping out. Somehow reading the NEP gives me a feeling that one is government is actually legitimize dropping out because it says that you can go to vocational training after class 6 or 7 or 8, and we know that large number of disabled children anyway drop out around that time, and they do not properly have any vocational training. System is also not there in our country. Major thing that happens is, and also it's important to remember here that NEP talks about RPT Act, but when in the RPT Act there is a section on vocational training, but that's under employment chapter. So how do we see the synergies between RPD, NEP? I mean, it's like it's just not enough to quote a law and says we'll invoke a law and says we'll follow it. There are a lot of differences in the law and this particular policy, and I mean, this policy does not also say that the national disability policy will be amended. So I don't know what kind of changes we see from this NEP, and it's actually, the more I read it, particularly if you read between the lines, you find much more differences are coming in between all those rhetorics we are reading in the NEP. I'd like to say that most of the special schools are anyway run by NGOs, philanthropic organizations, as mentioned in the National Education Policy. The special schools, for example, I'm from West Bengal, so Ramakrishna Mission runs very good special schools for blind. It's called Blind Boys Academy for children with visual impairments, and that school is free of cost, but there are many NGOs. I'm not naming any, but I know many NGOs who actually run special schools, particularly for children who have autism, who have any kind of intellectual disability, for hearing impairment. The schools are run by NGOs, and these schools, these NGOs charge a high amount of fees from the parents. Very few parents actually can afford to send their children to these NGO-run schools. And invariably, all the schools I'm talking about, all the special schools, they are all of them actually again, they are not under education department. They are under in Bengal we have the social, we don't call it social justice, we call it social welfare. So education of our children, majority of our children is under social welfare, which can't be. I mean, the curriculum is not same from one special school to other school. It's totally at like, they can decide on their own what fees they will take, what curriculum they will follow, till which age group they will cater to. Everything is actually whims of the NGOs. This is the reality, and it's very interesting because RPD Act talks about. They say that a child can choose. Our law says choose from either special school or inclusive education in his or her neighborhood. I mean, neighborhood school है कहाँ? Neighborhood school तो है नहीं. अगर रूरल एरिया में है तो स्पेशल स्कूल है नहीं. अगर अर्बन में है उधर भी ऐसा नहीं कि मेरे पास चॉइस है. For example, I can tell you that Indian Institute of Cerebral Palsy is located in one particular part of the city of Calcutta, and majority of the children, their family actually take rent in that particular area of the city, because it is very difficult if you're staying in a totally like a northern part of Kolkata. You cannot take a child with cerebral palsy in the kind of inaccessible environment we have every day to school, which is actually in southern part of the city. So these kind of things are also happening. If you see that there are majority of the parents actually they shift there. So neighborhood, it's not that you have a choice to go to a school in your neighborhood. You are actually shifting your residence, and it's a reality that is happening right now. National education policy talks about. I am particularly very concerned about the point 6.12, where it talks about the education policy says that it will enable parents of disabled children to teach them. This is scary because again the pressure is on the family. When I say as a family, it's actually the pressure is on the mother. Even during the pandemic, there are reports, there are many mothers who said that now that the children, even children with visual impairments or any other impairments, they said that now that online education is going on, the mothers actually had to leave their jobs so that they can take care that the child who's getting online education from the school can attend that class, because it's very difficult for a disabled child to access online education which is going on right now. And majority of even our large number of visually impaired students are actually fighting court cases, so that because they have been forced to give online examination. So cases are going on in High Court and even in Supreme Court. And that's for the higher education level I'm talking about. But for the lower level, the students, the mothers are actually suffering much more, because and this NEP actually says that it will talk about it talks about enabling parents of disabled children to teach them. So onus comes back to the families and not to the state, which I find very scary. NEP talks about special education zone. And special education, as we understand, the disability sector understands, is actually is not referred by special education zone here. This SEZ thing it talks about all disadvantaged children. One can say it's a good thing, because we usually, when we are talking about disadvantaged children, a large number of people also forget about children who are disabled, but it actually can go in a very wrong way, because as we understand, I have got a training on of being a special educator, and what I am trained to is actually to teach a child who's got multiple disabilities how to make him wear a shirt, how to brush his teeth, and these are the basic skills. And these children actually go to school to learn these skills under special educators, and this is a kind of special education that I've been exposed to. And of course, a child who's got visual impairment, his special education will require study material in Braille, or since online is so much in the website should be accessible for him, and those kind of requirements are there. But here you are talking about special education zone. Now, in this whole special education zone, where of course a child who's coming from a first generation learner, from maybe coming from a scheduled caste or a tribal family, that child will need some kind of special requirement, but requirements are so varied. So when you say SEZ, this is something, for me it becomes much more confusing what exactly the government is planning to do. And who are the people they are actually catering to when you said SEZ, and who are the people they will take take consultations, because this whole NEP, the consultations didn't happen with any of us. So we know it's something. These are things which scares us. How this kind of SEZ will affect disabled children. Again, there's a gender inclusion fund mentioned in the National Education Policy, and this policy it says that it will create fund for girls and transgender. It's very interesting because the whole national education policy does not mention anything about any other alternate sexuality issues. So what about children who are cisgender but who are gay or lesbian? So it's totally like silent on that section. And as a person who's working on the intersection of gender and disability, I find that this vulnerability of girls with disabilities does not come out in this NEP. A majority of the disability groups, we keep on talking about comprehensive sexuality education of all disabled children, because we have seen many cases of sexual violence happening within school setups, within orphanages, within homes, and these children could not counter that because they didn't have enough information about sexuality, how to fight that. So those things are, of course, this policy is silent about. So our demands are not met. It talks about I'm not going into detail of the teachers training area, but what I personally feel is, it's good that it acknowledges that there are very shortage of special educators. Unfortunately, this RCI, the Rehabilitation Council of India, it is a short-staffed organization, and it's total revamp. This whole RCI Act needs to be revamped, and that is another demand. I'm not going into detail. I'm a little bit happy that it talks about Indian Sign Language, and there is a chance it talks about NIOS will be given responsibility of standardizing Indian Sign Language, which is an area of concern because we already have an Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center. The last one, since there is a time limit, the last point that I want to make is this NEP concerns us a lot because large number of children drop out because of mental health issues at an early age, around the age of 14, from school. And schools counselors we need a large number of schools do not have school counselors. Very few have. The children do not go there because of the high stigma level. And just the last point is this policy says that the MPhil program shall be discontinued. And Mental Health Care Act of 2017 defines clinical psychologist as someone who completes MPhil after MA. And in that, so there are a lot of controversies, a lot of discussions going on. So because again, MPhil in clinical psychology is not a research work. It's important to understand that this is an internship-like thing where the students go to hospitals and actually study, do hands-on work. So if discontinuing MPhil for clinical psychologists is something, another area of concern for a person like me. It needs a lot of much more detailed discussion, but I'll definitely end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it was very insightful assessment and commentary on the policies for the physically challenged. person. I appreciate your views on this. I would not like to summarize, but if I pick a few words from your presentation, you say that it seems to be a lot more rhetoric. How inclusion will happen, it is not known. A considerable amount of confusion and pathways are missing. These are your comment on this. Similar doubts and confusions were mentioned by Professor Shah. I'll come to that at the end. Why this confusion is happening? What's the root of this confusion?